Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Series 6 two-parter, The Rebel Flesh and The Almost People, written by Matthew Graham, who previously wrote for the Series 2 episode Fear Her, and as well at this point he had created his TV show Life on Mars, and is directed by Julian Simpson. This story ties into the mid-series finale of Series 6, A Good Man Goes to War, with many elements and aspects of this story actually, at least at the conclusion of the story, wraps up and ties into the story arc of the storyline, showing the resolution to the finale that will tie into the mid-series finale, so that story can tell its own narrative in a sense. So yeah, in that kind of sense, it's pretty interesting. When this story first aired, it was hugely popular. A lot of people really enjoyed this episode. However, there are some people who considered it a bit overrated, considered it a bit weak, and it's all about opinion basis, but this series is all about my experience, my viewing of the show. I actually really enjoyed this episode when it first aired. However, I think looking back, the story as a whole seems to struggle as it tries to get to the finishing line, shall we say. But that's beyond the point. I'm actually going to try and... I think we're going to struggle with this vlog because the story tackles with many elements that Doctor Who is vastly familiar with. Mainly, it actually tackles two Doctor Who status quos. Yeah, it's actually kind of one of two. It's actually two of Doctor Who's popular types of storytelling into one episode. It is both a base under siege. For those of you who don't know, Base Under Siege is the Doctor Who story type in which the Doctor and a handful of characters find themselves in a secure location which is getting breached by monsters or the enemy at nearly every turn, and it's basically how characters have to survive. But it's also a diplomatic story, and for those of you who don't know what that is, diplomatic stories are another type of Doctor Who story in which the Doctor comes in between a conflict between two types of races, and none of them seem to be like the most villainous. It's usually humans versus another type of monster, and the Doctor is trying to break peace between the two civilizations. However, due to at least one character on each side acting irrationally, usually the stakes get higher and higher and higher, and it's up to the Doctor mainly to try and get everybody organised to peace, which rarely actually happens. So this story is actually doing two things at once. And as well, this story also has very almost rip-off similarities to Series 5's two-parter, Hungry Earth and Cold Blood. That's the one with the Silurians. There's many elements in that plot line that actually are kind of repeated here. In fact, in this story, at the start of this story, the pre-credit sequence is these minor characters, and one of them basically gets sucked into the ground. They're working on these acid. They're basically mining for acid, and they have this pool of a particular type of acid, and these characters start laughing about. And one character, Jennifer, pushes her co-worker into the vial of acid by accident. But they have this very, and I think this is what makes a lot of people really like the story, is the vast concept of the episode, as this character is essentially dying. He's being acetate, his body's on acid, his legs get eaten away, he loses his arm starts melting as he waves goodbye to them. And all our characters are very just nonchalant about it. They're just like, come on, help me, get me out. And they're like, I'm sorry, but you're dead. Oh, okay, just let me out. Those acid suits cost a fortune. So you got to sign all that paperwork, and as compensation, and being sued for the suits and stuff. And that's mainly their top priority, as our characters then leave the room with that one still dying in the vial, and then suddenly that character appears in the corridor without his armor, and he's basically stated, it's like, right, we got to talk about what's in there, because if this comes up in the report, I just want to say I didn't fall in, Jennifer pushed me. And it's like, oh no, it was just a joke, it's because you got like 2 left feet, and then they joke around how like, oh, no one actually was hurt. And actually I really like the final shot of the pre-credit sequence in which we see this person, he's clearly in vast amounts of pain in his face as the ganger is sent basically to its death. Then when we get into the credit scenes, we get when we get back to the Doctor and the TARDIS with Amy and Rory, who listens to the Muse. For all I know, I'm not actually familiar with Muse music. I'm guessing it's the Muse, which then begs the question, because Muse did a cover of the Doctor Who theme song. How does that work in the canon of things? But the Doctor basically proclaims that he's going to drop them off somewhere, as he's got things to do. He needs to see something. And at one point, he's actually looking at his scanner, which reads whether Amy is pregnant or not, and it keeps fluctuating between positive and negative. This is something that ties into the rest of the series storyline of the first half of Series 6, as the Doctor has been shown on multiple occasions to look at his scanner to try and look at Amy's pregnancy test, as she's been scanned for being pregnant. However, not even the TARDIS seems to work out if she's pregnant or not. And so the Doctor basically instructs that he's going to send Amy and Rory away somewhere, so he can do like his own little thing, an own little mission. And what I do actually really like about this episode is the relationship between Doctor, Amy and Rory in conjunction, in an isolated bubble of themselves. Matt Smith here has to play this Doctor who knows more than he is telling. He's got keeping all the cards to his chest, even from his companions. And Amy basically is like, right, Doctor, there's something you're clearly not telling me. And the Doctor has to try and avoid the subject overall, or tries to put it in a way which Amy might not be feeling comfortable with. And that kind of stuff really, I actually think, really works in the episode. There's even a bit where the Doctor seems to imply that he's been here before, or like in certain cases he seems to know what is going on in terms of the production of this factory, which is actually taking refuge in a monastery. And the Doctor, when he goes into the building and they held him at gunpoint, the Doctor is like, right, I'm actually here to look at your systems. I need to look at your systems now. And when they ask which one, he turns to them and he just goes, you know which one. And when he sees this puddle of this material called flesh, he basically is like, all right, there you are. As the characters are confused and disordered, like, what the hell's going on with this? How does the Doctor really know what's going on? At least from Amy's and Rory's point of view. And that kind of stuff is really interesting. It reminds me of a lot of the relationship between Ace and the 7th Doctor. So if you ever wanted to see the 11th Doctor take up some aspects of the Seventh Doctor, this story, I believe, is for you, as Doctor fluctuates between his happy-go-lucky Second Doctor persona and this kind of more quieter, just kind of, a lot of scenes he's just standing in the background watching Amy's reactions to things, which mainly plays part in the second half. And that kind of stuff is really interesting and really keeps the momentum forward and keeps the interest of this episode. And it's clear that Stephen Moffat's main go-to for Matthew Graham's in terms of the plot is to set up that the Doctor is this mysterious character. I would not have believed, I wouldn't be surprised, should I say, that was the first thing that was talked about, and Matthew Graham kind of built his script around that concept, around that idea. And there's a lot of elements as well where the Doctor, in terms of the larger narrative, he keeps the cards to himself as he starts learning more about these characters that he's interacting with and their whole dilemma. But what really makes this episode really weak, in my opinion, and it's something that people who don't like this episode, this story, all agree with, is that the new characters, the characters that we get introduced in this story, are just not interesting. We have Miranda, played by Raquel Cassidy. I believe I'm pronouncing that name wrong. But for us, first of all, I've seen Cassidy in many programs before, and she's a fantastic actress. I've seen her, she does a lot of great comedies. She was in A Touch of Cloth at one point. She was brilliant in that. Here, she constantly feels like she's sleeping on the job. Despite her supposed to be the leader of this regime, she kind of has this kind of just always tired. There's kind of an explanation how she's got like this brain clot in her head later down the episode, but there's never a scene where I bought her and I bought that she was interested in this role. It generally feels like she was there because she had nothing else to do. And like I said, Cassidy is a great actress. She has done amazing things in other episodes of other shows. But in this role, in this Doctor Who, I don't know what happened here, but she really didn't seem interested in the performance. The character Miranda herself as well seems to set up a lot of these issues, a lot of these dilemmas for the story for seemingly no reason. All the characters, at one point, the Doctor seems to predict that there's these solar flares. He was trying to get near this location at the start of the episode before trying to drop Amy and Rory off in another direction. However, because of a storm, it actually knocked the TARDIS into earlier on, which the Doctor previously wanted to land it. It landed a lot earlier in the timeline than he wanted, which is something that ties into later on in the episode. And the Doctor, he kind of predicts there's these storms. He has this like thing where you can predict the storm. It's just a globe, which is strange because if you actually watch the episode, I mean, it's just a normal globe, but the Doctor just starts shaking it before the globe. He shakes it. He claims that there's a storm coming, only for a storm to happen. Is the Doctor the one making the storms? That could be a really great fan theory right there. If he's actually like not only playing all the characters, but he's the one who's actively making the situation worse, so he can learn a bit more. That would be kind of interesting. But there's basically these solar flares, these solar storms about to hit this little island, and it's about to injure a lot of people on the island if they don't evacuate, or at least get into a safer location. And the Doctor, who at this point Miranda believes is like a health and safety inspector, and is also like a kind of weatherman as well. And the Doctor stated to her, right, there's a big storm coming, we better get underground and play it safe. But all of our other characters, all of her people that she that work for her are telling her the same thing. Okay, we go down, it'll be safer. We'll only be taking a few minutes and then we can go back. But Miranda, for no reason, is like, no, we stay here, we do the job. I mean, I get it that she's determined for her job and she's pushing into her work life, but the fact that every single character is telling her it's a bad idea, and she doesn't hate these characters. She has no disinterest in any of them, or any hatred or aggressiveness towards any of them. She's just very unlikable for no reason. And especially how later on in the episode, there's this dilemma between the two types of characters. Doesn't really work in terms of the narrative. We also have Jennifer, who starts off as this really shy, timid character. Later on, she has a relationship, in a sense, with Rory, which is actually, again, another interesting thing. And she's played by Sarah Smart, and she does actually a pretty decent job with her role. You can clearly tell she's interested in it, at the very least, and she does get into the role as much as she can, but some of the dialogue that Matthew Graham has given her is so horrible and really doesn't benefit much of the character. Whether it's Matthew Graham's script, because Matthew Graham's is a great showrunner. Life on Mars is a great example. However, his previous Doctor Who story, Fear Her, was also incredibly panned, and many elements from that story, like the poor dialogue, makes its way into this story, and the weak characters make themselves into this adventure. It's very... I feel like Matthew Graham's is kind of the issue here. But anyway, let's set up what the story is trying to thing. We get introduced to this material called the flesh, this substance that these characters use to basically use as like a second life. Essentially, these people in their normal actual states put themselves onto these machines, which then the flesh material can process. It basically calculates, and it then forms a complete, almost duplicate version of the person, which they can control telepathically in these machines. It's basically another life, which these characters call gangers, like double gangers. These characters are called gangers, and the Doctor worries that there's something sentient within the flesh itself, and that them feeding it, their emotions, feeding them their personalities, could actually cause vast amounts of harm and danger. So a solar storm starts erupting, and just like there's a lot of issues in this story, because when the storm starts hitting, our characters they start like running about. The Doctor tries to get up to this cockerel that's on the top of the monastery, and he hopes to redirect something for the storm. It's here that's a great example of Julian Simpson's directing. There are a lot of great shots here. Julian Simpson is mainly known for her basic television directing roles. So this is kind of like the first time that she's done a big franchise like Doctor Who, and she does a pretty decent job. However, you can tell that she is vastly new to special effects and VFX work. So a lot of the visual and digital effects really don't hold up, with the exception of the half-human, half-ganger design when it's them these strange makeups, almost Voldemort-looking appearances with these almost dry eyes. That looks really cool. However, there are some really naff effects, if I say so myself. But when there is no visual like stuff like that, when there's no CGI work, there's no bombastic action scenes, because this story isn't very action-packed. It's mainly a talky episode. She does a very good job. There's some really inspiring imagery. There's a great... essentially what happens is that the storm actually knocks the machines off, so that the people are now free from their harnesses and believe that the doppelgangers, the gangers have died, evaporated, because that's what usually happens when they disconnect. However, as the characters slowly learn, these gangers have actually gained sentience. They actually have become their own individuals, but they're kind of they're kind of confused. They're trying to put their lives together. So when we first get the hints that they are alive, our characters, Amy, Rory, and a handful of characters who, I guess the story tries so hard to feel relatable and seem real. However, they are literally background characters. One of the actors is from Ashes to Ashes and Life on Mars. You know that dorky one. He's in this, which is really cool. Tie-in again to Matthew Graham's work outside of Doctor Who, and also one of them is played by what's his name? Brian Donner. That's not Brian Donner. The guy who'd go on to play the 11 in the Eighth Doctor audio drama. So that's some really cool tie-in to some very heavy Doctor Who stuff. So I guess you can headcanon it that this is actually the 11. Who knows? But these characters aren't like I said, they just aren't that interesting. But the first hint that they've gone walkabout, shall we say, is that basically they go into the dining room only to see our character like a vinyl being played, one of their vinyls being played. Somebody has put stacked some cards up, which is something that one of the characters does, and these new characters they're like, right, we got to execute them, we got to get rid of them, and then we got to leave. We got to kill our double gangers and leave. And the Doctor is pleading for them. It's like, no, don't. We can work side by side. You can. There's no reason to be harmed, to be dangered. And this is where the diplomatic story comes in, is that the Doctor's trying to break peace between the humans and the gangers. And the dilemma here really just does not work. From the humans' point of view, the dilemma just seems like us or them. They keep saying us and them, us or them, in this story, as if like it's a catchphrase, if you will. But it just seems really out of place for some characters who seem not like violent at all. However, suddenly now you've got the whole. Now there's two of them. There's this sudden aggressiveness towards them, with Miranda actually, the human Miranda actually trying to take arms. It's like, how dare you, Doctor, even consider the fact that we and them could exist in the same, as if like she's got some sort of grudge against the gangers. It's really strange, it's really odd. But also what doesn't work is that the Doctor's trying to break peace and trying to understand that they're both kind of innocent in a sense. But the gangers have this kind of third sentience. They kind of all tied into this this ganger subconscious, which seemingly can remember every time a gang has died, with remembering all the deaths, and always remembers that the last thing that it remembers within its eyes is why why am I dying? Why have they done this to us? Why has these humans just like dropped us and abandoned us and let us to die constantly, constantly after constantly, and this means that the gang has quickly become an aggressive nature. However, this kind of idea about the third consciousness really underlines the issue of this story, because the idea of a diplomatic story, what makes them work is that there is this dilemma that two of these characters these two races, these two civilizations can coexist if everyone just got along, but there's always this fear, this anxiety, these xenophobic ideologies that means that you can't get together. However, here that xenophobia is very forced, as it means that our characters here with that third consciousness, it's like you get a scene in which Jennifer ganger teams up with Rory after he doesn't know that Jennifer is a double ganger until Jennifer gets confused and starts trying to kill Rory. But then Jennifer takes this vastly violent approach that it must destroy all the humans, all the gangers must destroy all the humans for them to have a chance to survive. And especially when you consider Jennifer as a character, just really comes out of nowhere and seems to be really aggressive, and it also doesn't help with the diplomatic story, as you're supposed to feel at least both sides are kind of the good guys. It's just there's this confusion, this struggle between them. However, you've got these characters, before even a shot is fired, before even like anybody raises up arms, you have the evil Jennifer, shall we say, talking to the other gangers that she has met in the acid room, and it's like, we have the advantage, we can go wherever we can strike at them whenever we feel like it. Which, like, the fact that she takes such a straight, aggressive nature really seems really strange. It also seems vastly strange that Jennifer is the one that does it. The ganger for Miranda seems to actually be the kind of one which really goes against the idea that these are the same people, essentially. They put their feelings, their emotions, their memories into the gangers, but yet the Miranda who works with the gangers is the kind one, and the Jennifer, who's a ganger, is the angry, evil one. What? And that's mainly the dilemma for most of the episode. There's some really great shots. There's a great shot where Rory, he's hiding from the evil Jennifer, from the ganger Jennifer, and she's kind of calling out. She's kind of feeling bad in a sense, because Rory's the only person that's kind of taken any interest in her. And she turns around and she's got a ganger performance, and she's kind of elegantly walking around looking for Rory, as Rory can see her behind these graters. That's a really great shot, but the actual episode itself kind of falls flat. Let's talk about Rory for a second. Rory has this subplot with Jennifer, and she's this very shy person. She kind of takes this instant liking to Rory, like she fancies him, and the fact that Rory is also this kind individual, and when they speak and they talk, and the fact that Rory can remember Jennifer's name so quickly, she kind of feels a strange bond towards him, to the point where she actually tries kissing him at one point. But Rory is so Rory doesn't respond back to it, as he is married to Amy, and the fact that Rory is so content with Amy is something that I really do like. I actually do kind of like this scene. There's a really poorly written scene, but a really great scene in terms of the context in which Rory sees the doppelganger Jennifer, and she's talking about her memories. She remembers when she was a kid, she had an imaginary friend that looked exactly like her, and now it's kind of become true. But she's the one that's the imaginary friend. She is technically the not person. And Rory actually like stays with her and befriends her, and it's like, right, we are going to help the gangers. As Rory actually takes a much prominent role than he has actually ever had within the series. And the basis of it, the premise of it, really does work, really does hold up. Where it fails, however, is, like I said, is with Jennifer always taking a sudden evil approach, because you need to have them as the villains, which kind of goes up against the whole diplomatic premise, which again, and it makes Rory feel really dumb by comparison, because there is scenes where he takes the gangers, he takes the human characters somewhere safe, essentially, to the acid. So he tells them that there's a secret route, but actually it was a ploy for him. From his point of view, he thought that the gangers and the humans wanted the humans and them to talk. However, it turns out they tricked Rory, and Rory feels really bad about it, and it's like, I'll get you back, Amy. We also talked about Amy as well, but let's talk about the cliffhanger for part one, as we get this massive revelation. Essentially, throughout the episode, the flesh container seems to be growing another person as the lips start comes out, and it's like, trust me. And we see a hand later on, and Jennifer starts screaming when she's in the room earlier on in the episode. And that cliffhanger was probably one of the most memorable cliffhangers in the Matt Smith era. As much as this episode is kind of 50-50 with people, some people love it, some people hate it, I think we can all agree that cliffhanger really does work, in which the doctor, basically the gangers are after the humans as they're running around through the corridors, and they lock themselves in the ganger, the room where they make the ganger duplicates. But the doctor notices that there's someone else there behind the pillars, as the doctor screams out to show itself, as Amy's trying to get to the doctor, and says like, we need to find Rory, this is insane, how can we fight like ourselves? And the doctor's just like, it's going to get even more insaner. Show yourself. And suddenly, from the dark, a doppelganger version, a flesh ganger version of the 11th Doctor appears in front of all of our characters, as that ties into the next episode, The Almost People. That is a brilliant cliffhanger. Nothing more to say about it. Well executed, well directed, well acted. The first half, when the episode kicks back in Almost People, probably one of the most memorable scenes in the story is the Doctor, the ganger Doctor, basically citing a lot of Doctor Who quotes. He says, reverse the planetary, the neutron flow. He actually says, would you like a jelly baby, in the voice of the fourth Doctor, which is actually an audio clip taken from Robots of Death. But to hear Tom Baker's voice suddenly come out of Matt Smith was hilarious and very strange. There's also a bit where he says, hello, I'm the Doctor. And according to Wikipedia, according to the TARDIS wiki, according to all information I can find, apparently that's an audio clip of David Tennant taken from one of his episodes. I've listened to that 100 times. I've viewed this on headphones, on TV. It sounds exactly like Matt Smith. I can't see any difference from Matt Smith's voice in that scene. Am I gone mad there? So if you've seen this episode and you know the clip I'm on about, please comment below whose voice you heard, Matt Smith or David Tennant. I, honest to God, can't hear David Tennant's voice in any way, shape or form. It's Matt Smith. I don't know where everybody's getting this information from. It's really strange. But then this doppelganger, as it's confused, it starts shouting why. It also gets its quotes muddled up. With the most famous of them is reverse the polarity of the jelly babies. Reverse the jelly babies of the neutron flow, or something like that. And this doctor starts stabilising, and we got Matt Smith basically playing against Matt Smith, and that's where really most of the fun of the episode comes from. Most of the dilemma comes from. But there's also this storyline within the episode which gets heightened up at this point due to there being two doctors, one of them being a ganger flesh doctor, is the concept of Amy. Now, Amy in here, also like most of the humans, takes an instant dislike to the gangers. And especially with the other doctor, she kind of has this whole, sorry, you're a different person, stop calling yourself doctor, stop calling me Melody, which is what the doctor calls her, because it's her original name. But the doctor, he always says it to her when he's concerned about Amy, and Amy kind of takes this sudden aggressiveness between the ganger doctor. And although it does actually kind of work later on, because later on, the doctor she believes is the ganger goes outside and has this like psychic connection with the flesh. She basically proclaims to this ganger doctor that she has seen the doctor's future and can be killed. The doctor gets killed in his later future, and Amy kind of puts the idea to this character that this ganger doctor is actually the one that dies at Lake Celestrio. And it's actually kind of cool that, she kind of works out. It kind of is distracting again, part of the storyline, which is something which I've talked about heavily in this. I'll talk about that later on. This episode kind of forgets this scene. But anyway, this doppelganger doctor is connected to the flesh and it feels the pain of the wise. Grabs Amy by the collar and pushes her to the wall, and it's like, why? Their eyes are full of pain and misery and full of just the one word, why? Just really aggressively towards Amy. And Amy then takes basically her hatred for the flesh is stated there, which explains why she doesn't get along with the ganger doctor that she believes later for the episode past that point. However, my issue is that Amy doesn't like this ganger doctor even before that, and she takes an instant disliking to him, despite the episode. Despite her being completely understanding where the doctor's coming from in terms of the concept of the gangers, and does kind of understand, what the gangers are. They are essentially these flesh people come to life, and they've gained all the personalities and memories of their hosts. But here, all of a sudden, Amy takes this instant dislike to the 11th Doctor's double ganger. And it's really strange, it's really odd. It feels really out of character for Amy. But Amy does have another role in the story, and that is essentially she kind of has this. She's kind of like also incredibly worried when it comes to Rory. As Rory, Amy's role in this story is actually kind of lessened in here. In this story, essentially, Rory is the main companion, which is something I wish the show did a lot more of. I always felt like Rory was such an underrated character. I know it's like with Martha. I felt like the showrunners, Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat, didn't know what they had at the time. But yeah, and Amy kind of takes the background role. She becomes essentially the second companion in the adventure, despite her having more time with the Doctor than Rory. But she kind of like flip-flops all around and stuff, and she takes this I like the elements of the story where she's really determined to get back to Rory. It shows a kind of her growth throughout the series. Like before, she kind of had this. She cares about Rory, but she was also willing to kiss the Doctor because she fancied him the night before their bloody wedding. But also in the story, you have Amy having this instant prejudice against the Ganger Doctor, and it seems like it was there mainly to set up these stakes, to set up the issue of the narrative. We also have the Ganger Doctor essentially becoming sad as he basically goes to investigate with this other character, one of the human characters. However, Miranda has given her man orders to, when the Ganger Doctor is in a certain place, to knock him out, and the Ganger Doctors then meet up with what they believe to be the Ganger Doctor to essentially team up and take down the humans together. And the Doctor kind of starts agreeing with them. And there's a bit where the Doctor becomes aggressive towards Rory. And Rory, despite being really angry at the Gangers, is like, right, we need to go back. We need to go and save them. Does then the Ganger Doctor even like push Rory, and every time he tries to get a question in, he just says like ring ring, ring ring, and he starts to becoming loosened in terms to his own mind starting to become crazy, until we realise that the ring ring he's actually predicting a phone ringing of one of the characters' son, who the Ganger can see the son on the video call, because it's like a futuristic, it's like the video, it's a call, it's like a hologram. And when he realizes it's right, if I let this person die, I'm going to kill this kid's actual human father. So he tries to go and save the man, but it's too late. He gets hit by the acid. What that does then is essentially all our characters basically realizes that this war that they've going up, this war is kind of needless and pointless. It's a very anticlimactic conclusion to the final battle, and the final of the diplomatic side of the story. However, when it comes to the basing the siege, a new aspect comes in as Jennifer fully embraces her Ganger persona, and she can kind of morph herself into this strange, thin-limbed creature, which, fun fact, was actually inspired by an illustration that appeared in the Alice in Wonderland novel, in which there's a particular image in which you see Alice with a very long neck, and that was the inspiration for the design of the fully fleshed creature, and essentially going around trying to monstrously kill everybody it can, as our characters can try to get to the TARDIS so the Doctor can get them out. And the Doctor essentially, the Doctors get near to the TARDIS, and the Doctor, which Amy believes is the real Doctor, basically proclaims, right, if we can have this signal, we basically got the signal that the flesh that we got from our readings from the flesh earlier on in the story, which is what we came here to do, we will use that to not only kill the creature, but also kill all the flesh. So real Doctor, Amy, Rory, and all the humans and Gangers that we've saved, get in the TARDIS and we will let you go. And Amy's like, no, you're the real Doctor, what are you on about? But it turns out that the way you can realise who's who is by their shoes. The Doctor, between the time of him touching the flesh way earlier on in the episode and him meeting the flesh Doctor, is that his shoes got covered in acid, and so he had to get them replaced. The episode sets this up as a great explanation of how to differentiate one another. And the plot twist here is that earlier on in the episode, they swapped shoes. And it turns out that what we believe is to be the Ganger Doctor for the majority of the episode is actually the real Doctor, and vice versa. However, there's rarely a lot of shots with the shoes, and that is really strange and bizarre. It sets up this part of the plot line which makes you understand who's who, in a sense, a little bit better, but rarely used. It's very strange, it's very odd. So essentially what that means is that the Doctor that attacked Amy, the one that was screaming why, was actually the real Doctor. This is what I meant by that scene being completely forgotten. Because at this point now, that means that the real Doctor knows about his death. He knows about Lake Siestro. This idea is never brought up. It's never said in this scene with Amy just like realising, oh wait, I've told the real Doctor, that we've seen him die. It's never shown later on in the series, and when the Doctor does decide to die at the start of The Impossible Astronaut, it's completely forgotten about. It's very strange and very bizarre, and it's hugely distracting towards the main story arc of Series 6. But in terms of this singular episode, I guess the twist does kind of work, and Amy is just like, you were twice the Doctor I thought you were, which kind of felt a bit false in my opinion. Like the setup of her not liking the Ganger Doctor didn't work to begin with, and her suddenly going, oh, actually you were a great Doctor all along. It never felt real. It never felt strong. So the Doctor starts taking all the characters out through the TARDIS, takes them all home, takes two of them to a particular location in which they can basically get into a conference and basically explain what happens, and hopefully find a way of making humans and flesh live in peace with one another. However, Amy starts feeling very sick. She's getting this pain in her stomach, which leads into a cliffhanger for the finale of the episode, in which the Doctor reveals that Amy is, in fact, pregnant. She's actually going into labour. Wait, what? But Amy is not pregnant. Remember, she said she wasn't pregnant and she doesn't have any bump or anything. How could she be going into labour? It turns out that the Doctor's main plan, the reason he was being so secretive towards Amy and Rory earlier on in the episode, is because he was planning to go there much later in its timeline to discover more about this flesh, about this material, because he knows he's discovered that Amy herself is actually a flesh duplicate. And the Doctor claims, from what he knows about the flesh, he will try and do this as painlessly and as kind as possible. But Rory, you've got to step away from her. And we get this traumatic scene where it's like, Rory originally is like, no, but then the Doctor's like hesitant, and the Doctor has all the authority, and he tells Amy, it's like, don't know where you are, where you needed, who took you, we will find you. As he uses his sonic screwdriver on Amy, and just like all the flesh characters prior to it, she disintegrates and turns into a puddle of goo on the floor. As Amy wakes up fully pregnant in this container, and she looks up and she sees the eye patch woman, which she's seen throughout these 2 episodes and in the previous 5 episodes of Series 6, as it turns out that it's actually somebody coming through this peephole, this eye patch lady, which has turned out to be Kavarian, and she basically is like, baby's already is ready for here, now push, and that is the cliffhanger of the story. When this episode aired, all anybody could talk about was how amazing, how shocked that twist was at the end of the episode. That Amy, throughout all of series 6 so far, was actually a double ganger. She actually wasn't pregnant at all, and that it was the doctor, and the doctor kind of knew about this, or at least he learned about it at this point at his timeline. That was such a jaw-dropping big moment. It got the entire nation talking about Doctor Who. The issue is that the actual episode behind it all was kind of weak to certain people. Some people still really enjoyed the episode overall, the story overall, but yeah. So that is the Almost People and Rebel Flesh. Overall, in my opinions, it's not very good. It seems to be it doesn't have any strong characters. The setting does become a bit dull after a while. Julian Simpson does a fantastic job at what is being given to him. But Matthew Graham does, sadly, is the weakest link here. His scripture just isn't that strong. The characters aren't compelling. Some characters become aggressive to each other for seemingly no reason. And it's just pretty weak. And it's a shame because it's the second two-parter of Series 6. And the two-parters is where you really want to get your stories to count. But this story ties into the next episode. It's mainly set up for the next episode. But yeah. So that is the Rebel Flesh and Almost People. Just not that interesting. So join me next time when the Doctor and Rory go on a intergalactic hunt to find the Centurion's wife, as Amy is in the middle of an armada as she has been held prisoner by a religious organisation hell-bent on destroying the Doctor any way, shape or form. So join me next time for its prequel episode, as well as A Good Man Goes to War. We'll also be talking about the mini episode 2 days later, which ties in later for that episode. So join me next time for that, and I'll see you all next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!